You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host today, Christos, and with me today, it's a full house and then some. We have Amy, Kelvin, and Kristin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're all over the place today. Amy, how are you doing over in the Vegas quadrant?
Well, doing fabulous. Had a great week and excited that we are all here talking Trek today.
Yes. I think our topic today has something to do with why we all managed to make sure we're here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Kelvin, how are things over in Manchester?
Very wet, very grey, very autumnal. You're wearing your Wrath of Cardigan, I see, like me, and you've complained that you're hot. And I'm wearing it because I'm cold. So it's very necessary. It's cardigan weather, but I am in full bear hibernation mode now. Summer is over, so I'm delighted. I live for my Sundays with you guys. I just realized my microphone is nowhere near my mouth, so I will bring that a bit closer.
Hopefully that's bad, though. I didn't really notice. But good.
Yeah.
Now it's better, though. All good. Lovely to see you. So it's funny that we talk cardigans because I went to our football game last night at SDFC, my team, and I have this really cool SDFC cardigan that I bought like 2 months ago, and I've yet to be able to wear it because it still hasn't gotten cool enough. But I'm not complaining because in San Diego that happens like this. Like one day it's summer, the next day it's fall, at least fall for us. All right, and Kristin, how are you? You have a little special guest here. Let's see how you're doing.
I'm great. I have a special guest. Maurice has flown up to the Great White North to come and visit us and see our little slice of paradise up here. And it was, this has been yesterday was just beautiful. It was got up to 30, which is 84-ish. And it was sunny and just stunning. But Christos, same with you. One day that switch just goes click and that's it. There's no tapering off anymore. Yeah. It's just on and off.
Then it's blue jeans and pumpkin spice, right?
And you know what? That is okay. I am completely okay with that.
Yeah, same here. I love the San Diego climate and the diversity that it allows me with clothes and things like that. Yes. All right, so let's go into an episode recap here because we have a lot to talk about today. So this week we had the season 3 finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, New Life and New Civilizations. You don't get more Star Trek-y in your title than that. Well, Amy, what did you think of the finale of Strange New Worlds?
Oh, I loved it. And just, it felt like a movie. It was so complex and so many different things. And we got a lot of answers that I'm really happy with. And I loved the journey. With talking with Mark, he put it best, I felt. It was a mashup of Inner Light and Masks. You know?
Yeah, and I put Inner Light in my notes too. I avoided all of our spoilers online because I didn't get to watch it till Friday night. But Inner Light definitely was a vibe I got. Kelvin, what did you think?
I thought it was an underwhelming end to an underwhelming season arc. Now, that's not to say I didn't like it. I think there were some great moments. And one of the great things I do love about Star Trek when there is a season-long arc is the speculation that we do as fans. So when we're wrong with the speculation, I'm really pleasantly surprised. So this whole thing about Captain Patel and is she going to transform into the Gorn that we know from the TOS, and then basically she transforms into something completely different. I'm here for that. I love it. I was surprised. I don't see it as a missed opportunity because I think last week's episode did enough of I would say a nod to Arena, but it was a in-your-face homage to Arena. I liked it for that, but I just don't massively like Pike and Battelle as a couple. So the whole inner light, what you're calling it, of look at the future we're not going to have, but I will give you these false memories of it just so you can feel you've had this future with me. I didn't care. I didn't care for it. I don't care that they had this child that now won't exist. I don't care that his accident didn't happen and they lived a long life. There's a huge flaw in the continuity that if Captain Battelle means so much to Christopher Pike in his timeline, then when Spock takes him back in the menagerie, why didn't the Telosians create the fantasy of Captain Battelle? And he goes off with her instead of Vina. So something's very wrong with that aspect. And yeah, she can, she turned into stone when really I thought she was quite wooden all the way through.
Oh, wow. She cold. Well, that was it. I agree with a lot of what both of you just said, which is kind of funny. I'm like right in the middle of both of you on this one. I think that if there was if you would have chucked the worst episode of this season, which I don't know, I'd have to go back and tell you which one that was, and made this episode 9, and then go give me a better episode 10, maybe we'd be hitting it here, because I do like this episode a lot. Yeah. I actually was tearing up during the inner light phase, as we call it, because it was really sweet. For a show that's not supposed to be serialized, once again, you have to have been watching all, 3 years of Strange New Worlds in every damn episode to understand what happens in this episode. Yeah. I mean, even right back to the episode that directly ties into this, not to mention knowing Battelle's whole history. I do want to call out a little Lower Decks. We had an ascension in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little Lower Decksy to me. I'm like, another ascension happens. She turns into like a goddess or something. Yeah, so I really like the episode. And there was some ship porn in this episode. I do like the way the Farragut and the Enterprise kind of team up for that in the mind meld. And there's that whole Jim and Spock thing. Liked all of that. Just it's not an episode. It's not a finale for me. But it was a good wrap up to the Battelle storyline. And Kelvin, you do make a really good point that, why Vina and why not Battelle?
Yeah. I think you've made a great point there in terms of the placing of the episode. If this was a 2-parter, if episode 5 and episode 10 were together as a 2-parter, I think it would be a really strong story altogether.
Yeah,
with the kind of the Ensign Gamble aspects of the the good and the evil, but it just wasn't it was just anticlimactic as a season ender. And even the scene on the bridge where they all deliver a line to kind of cheer up Pike, it was really forced. Uhura said, "Hailing frequencies open." She wasn't hailing anyone. Who to? Yeah. Who's talking? Yeah. No, it was like, deliver your catchphrase and then we'll move on. It was just a little bit shite.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about this is, it's a little telling, is the showrunners were out there on Thursday, Friday doing a lot of interviews and whatnot, and they emphasized over and over again that how much better season 4 is. So it's almost like they know it's a shaky season, and for me, there's ups and downs, and and no consistency across. So.
Season 2 was a hard season to follow. It's given us some of the best episodes of Star Trek. And I'm fine. This is not, oh my God, the end of Strange New Worlds. It's we knew it's going to end anyway. But we're allowed to have a bell curve and up and down, a ripple effect. It's what makes Star Trek easy. Not every other series has had a linear better and better and better. There's been some weaker episodes and seasons of other Star Treks.
Yeah. Maybe what I'll say to wrap up this part is that maybe it's good that we can call it out, because that means we actually objectively look at our Star Trek and, we can say, hey, this is a stinker, or we didn't like this part or whatnot, versus, it's, Strange New Worlds, can't do no wrong, which is what I see a lot of on the internet.
Great costuming, wardrobe, and makeup yet again.
Yeah. The next topic is going to tie directly into our main topic today. We had the first episode of the new Khan miniseries drop. Amy, do you want to give us the description of what this new Khan miniseries radio drama is?
So the exciting expansion of the Star Trek universe will explore the dramatic, untold events that unfolded in the desolate world of Ceti Alpha 5 after Captain Kirk left Khan and his followers stranded there, paving the way for the iconic clash in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So the first episode, Paradise, they are marooned by Captain James T. Kirk on SETI Alpha 5. Khan Noonien Singh and his followers begin building a new civilization, but this strange new world harbors a number of secrets.
So we got this excellent little first episode. It was about, I don't know, there were some commercials in it, but it was about 45 minutes, right? So it literally feels almost like a Star Trek episode in terms of length. So I really appreciated that. Kristin, what did you think of this?
First thing, it was good. It was good. First reaction was good. The familiar voices. I'm very excited that they actually got like Tim Russ and George Takei to be on. Like that is really cool. And I'm missing his name, but he has such a good voice for this type of work.
Naveen Andrews, is it?
Yes. Every time he talked, it was just the resonance of his voice just totally pulled me into the story. Totally pulled me into the fact that he is like a prince. He had that je ne sais quoi to his voice that just kind of elevated him
that
across
regalness.
Any other person. Yeah. So overall, the story was really good. There's some alignments with To Reign in Hell, which of course I've talked about a lot because I just think it's a really freaking good book. So I'm excited to keep my eye out in terms of the parallels. That's going to be my little game during this series, is to compare and contrast.
I love that. Kelvin, what did you think?
Loved it. I can't believe it was 40 minutes long. It felt like 10 minutes. I had it on in the car and it was going off, and I was like checking the clock, going, "Oh, is something wrong?" No, I'd listened to it all. I just devoured it. Exactly what Kristin's just said. The legitimacy that it has because of Naveen's strong vocal acting in it, and it was weird because he's a Brit. He's almost like the perfect segue between Ricardo and the other chap who played him, Benedict Cumberbatch. So it was weird because at some points he sounded just like Ricardo, but not in a, trying to put it on, in an imitation kind of way. He just went there. I loved a lot of the modern storytelling. I mean, hands up who went back and watched Space Seed as well this week, just for the hell of it. I did. And the evolution of the character of Marla MacGyver's to make her a modern female story rather than this very subservient do as you're told female like in the 60s was brilliant. Like, they'd done a full Christine Chapel on her. They'd made her better, and there's so much to discover there with that character. I just can't wait for what's next. They've introduced all these voices who we don't know who the characters are. But I love an audio drama as well. This is the first one Star Trek's done properly, and I love the format. There's loads of really good Doctor Who ones out there by Big Finish, where they get a lot of the old actors from previous Doctor Who incarnations to reprise the Doctor, the Companion, and other characters. And they're really well received. So if this does as well as I'm hoping it's going to do, this might be our ticket to more voice acting shows that is not animation, like an Enterprise season 5 or all of those other things that we have on the shopping list. It would be a really good way to give us more old Star Trek, if that makes sense.
And I'm sorry, there's nothing needed more than a better end to Enterprise.
Yeah.
So Kelvin, I love that idea. I think a lot of it would do our hearts well to see that poor storyline get a better ending.
Amy, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm in for it. And I love filling in the gaps so that we're going to get these records. I'm sort of excited in the whole experiment and what we're going to find. So, and the little radio drama and the sound effects and the music, it's all just so fun. It makes me feel like I'm back at my grandma's house sitting around the huge radio listening. It's just it's nice.
I know. I listened to it the morning it dropped, and I like to listen to podcasts and stuff when I'm getting ready for work. I put it on a speaker and kind of carry that speaker around as I'm moving around. And I was like, "It's over!" And I'm not even ready yet. I loved it. I really, it did really pull you in, and I'll just, I'll keep this brief because you all three said everything I felt about it. I really got pulled right in. The sound effects, I think the legitimacy of the guy playing Khan, bringing in George Takei and Tim Russ, especially. I love that they kind of set this up as a Excelsior era story, looking back in an investigation. It's really, really cool. And I just agree. I want to see. I think this is a really good medium. I listened to an podcast interview with Kristen Beyer, who wrote this. She talked a little bit about that, Marla MacGyver's, we wanted to change her up a little bit more and modernize that character so it worked for today's audience.
I will say the one interesting thing is the same storytelling device used in the book from 2005. They have they're using it for this this radio drama or podcast or whatever you want to call it, and those are Marla MacGyver's recordings. So that was how that entire book was. So it was Bones, Kirk, and Sulu going to Khan's SETI Alpha 5 and finding Khan's little hideout. And it takes place between the end of Star Trek 4 and the beginning of Star Trek 5. So kind of like when we come into Star Trek 5 and they're camping and stuff, that's supposed to be sort of after the book. So I will be very interested to see how they handle the fact that Sulu should not be surprised by anything found on these tapes because he's heard them all. And I know, Christos, we got into our canon discussion. However, I don't know if this is canon either. But if you're going to use such an important part of a piece of Star Trek lore from 20 years ago, there better be some consistency.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess as a technical note, they're pretty much everything that happened between Nemesis and Discovery Season 1, all those novels are just part of the multiverse, as they call it. It happened, but it's in another multiverse. So yes, it's happened, but no, it hasn't. So I guess it's a little bit there for both ways. So as we're progressing post 2017, the books and whatnot that have followed are quote unquote canon until they decide they're not. Mm-hmm. They've written some Picard novels that they already have run over and changed a few things on screen. So, but I think that's how we kind of look to Prodigy Season 2 for how we digest all of that. Kelvin, do you want to introduce the main topic, which kind of leads us in from the previous?
I do indeed. I wonder where we could be going from this. So we are going to the movies with part 3, and we're going to do a deep dive on Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So as a little bit of a recap there, as if anyone's not seen The Wrath of Khan, Admiral James T. Kirk faces his greatest challenge yet. Suffering through doubts about his place in the galaxy, he's thrust into action once more against his most bitter foe, Khan Noonien Singh, who's escaped from his exile on SETI Alpha 5 and now seeks revenge on Kirk. With a powerful new device in the wrong hands and a no-win scenario in play, the cost of victory for the Starship Enterprise may prove too high.
What a good summary.
Amy, will you take us into topic 1?
Well, this one comes up so much and throughout all of Trek is your Kobayashi Maru, this no-win scenario, and are you going to face death? And this whole idea of sacrifice. So it's a huge topic to discuss. So this no-win scenario, do you really believe that you can prepare for it, Kelvin?
I'm shaking my head because that thing where they say, I don't believe in a no-win scenario. Well, I don't know if I do or not. I think I'm actually with Kirk on that. But I think a no-win scenario is ultimately a defeat in whatever aspects of life, whether it's in living or whether it's in any kind of challenge, you know. So no-win scenario is just losing, and you're gonna lose. And if it is so dramatic, a loss of death, destruction, failure as a leader, you don't know what's going to happen to yourself or how you're going to react until you're confronted with that. I like the idea of doing a test as an initial confrontation to see how you would surprise yourself with your reaction, but you might have a completely different reaction to a different no-win scenario at various times in your life. So I think it's interesting. I just don't think it's worth all the hoo-ha that it gets throughout all of Star Trek. I just don't think it's that big a deal. Full of opinions today. Sorry.
I love it.
Kelvin, I will say that is a hot take, but I don't entirely disagree with you, because I believe when, as humans, we are faced with what is appearing to be a no-win situation, our immediate reaction is to change the conditions of the test, or change the situation in which we find ourselves, and move forward and try to get past this no-win. I can't see many of us just sort of being like, well, I guess this is just what it is, and we don't try and do what Kirk did. So I don't know. But to say that it's not as big a deal, that's a big statement to make for a lot of Trek fans out there.
Yeah, I think what Kirk did is very arrogant. That idea that, I don't believe in the no-win scenario, and I can always win. It's very on brand for Kirk, so I'll give it that. I do think the Kobayashi Maru is talked about way, 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 way too much. But I like that the idea of it is to prepare you that sometimes you're going to have to make the hard calls and whatnot. I'm going to do Amy a favor here and flip this back to Troy going through the Kobayashi Maru. They didn't call it that, but that's literally what she did. And her lesson was to pass her Kobayashi Maru. She had to sacrifice somebody she loved in order to save the ship. So if anything, if the Kobayashi Maru prepares you to make those hard calls, I think then that's a better way to look at it versus the arrogance of saying there's always a way to win. There's always a way to get out of this unscathed. I don't necessarily think that's a good reflection of life.
Yeah, that's talking about that sacrifice. Like, this was so emotional, especially for all of the fans seeing Spock die. Like, this is
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. And it's just so emotional, and the foreshadowing that the movie does really just wraps around this sacrifice and how monumental it is for Spock. What does the Spock sacrifice mean to you, Christos?
I think, the needs of the many are greater than the needs of the one. And that's a theme you hear throughout this movie. And it's this idea that if I die, everybody lives. And that's very unselfish, I guess, of him. And that's very Vulcan too. Like, it's just pure logic to him. And so I will go do this. I love these people around me. I want them all to live. And it's a small price to pay in his eyes to save everybody, or else the alternate is they all die. And so logically, I think for Spock, it's a very easy choice to make, maybe less for another person.
Well, so many times, and I feel like we're seeing this more in TV and movies, like, well, I'm going to sacrifice myself. And then the friends or the group come around. No. And we've seen it in Star Trek and like Strange New Worlds. And Pike's like, nope, we're going to do this together. We're with you. You're not alone. So it's this give and take. But I feel like, do you see that as valuable? So that sort of diminishes his sacrifice, Kristin? See what I'm saying there?
I see what you're saying, but
because it sort of goes against the no-win scenario.
And it goes against the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, right? When they're like, no, I'm like, okay, but if we're actually in, let's say, like, I'm sure in the, the big world wars that happened, that there were people who had to make these hard decisions. And I'm sure there were people who found themselves in these Kobayashi Maru-esque, real life, literal life or death situations. And I've heard lots of stories of a soldier who throws themselves on a grenade, right, to save the rest of their platoon and whatnot, right? These have been done in real life. And I think that by maybe saying, oh, don't worry, we'll always find a way out as a group, now is also diminishing the sacrifices of the people who didn't have that choice. So I don't know, it's hard. I like the the whole teamwork makes the dream work. That's really cute. But I think that when we're looking at a no-win situation, how do we define winning? So is winning getting out with no casualties? So in that case, then yes, there's a lot of no-win situations. Or is getting out of the no-win? Hold on, I'm losing train of thought. Or is getting out the fewest amount of casualties as possible, right? So,
I just had a little thought, and we'll talk about this probably in 2 weeks when we talk about Voyager's Endgame. But Janeway gets Voyager home in the current timeline, and she lost more people, and so future Janeway wants to go back and fix it so she can cheat death and cheat the Kobayashi Maru and go back and get everybody home in one piece. It's very much a Kobayashi Maru-y type of thing. Would I change the past to bring everybody back because those sacrifices, were hard? So we'll talk about that in 2 weeks, everybody.
Yeah.
But
same with the Deep Space Nine, can't remember it, where they go back in time and they were going to sacrifice themselves as a group, and they find the civilization from like their past selves.
Children of Time.
Children
of Time.
Yes,
Season 5.
Thank you. Very similar to that, where the crew was like, well, we can't just look at everything our former selves built. We're not going to let that die for the few of us. So they were going to willingly sacrifice themselves to let their next generations live. And then, of course, Odo did what he did, kind of undoing all that. But we even see that sort of a no-win scenario. And that one kind of, in my opinion, I mean, it was great for the series because it kept going, but it did take away the idea that the winning is the least amount of casualties, because in that case, it was more people died for fewer people. Yeah, we could philosophically debate about this for hours.
We could.
Yeah. Well, and another theme that was definitely through the movie, I think iconically, are his reading glasses that he receives from Bones. And there's just these little phrases throughout the movie that it's like Kirk is feeling his age, and that there's, how are you going to live your life? And the commentary of, well, you're this admiral, but are you really happy with where you're at? And I don't know. I sort of felt like that message to me was like, yes, you're getting older, but now even more precious is the time. And so you should be doing what makes you happy. And everyone around Kirk is like, you need to get back on a ship, And so I love that this, him getting older, especially now that I am getting older, I can appreciate these things that is shown here in the movie.
Yeah, upon this rewatch, it really kind of hit me a little harder than it ever has in understanding this theme of the movie, because I recently turned 48, and I'm well aware that I'm less than 2 years away from turning 50, and I'm being called distinguished now when I see people and they see my silver sides of my hair, and I wake up sometimes and look in the mirror and I almost don't recognize myself, because, I mean, as much as people say, you look amazing, I am aging, and I'm accepting and learning to accept that, because it was like, I'm, closer to retirement than I was to the beginning of my career. So I am feeling that. Even at work, I am like the seasoned person that people come to for advice and for input, and they want my thoughts on it. So all of that just kind of rolls into that, that feeling. But I really think you hit it on the head, Amy. It's about doing what makes you happy, because at this point, the one thing in life that is certain is death, right? They say death and taxes, right? But death. But so I'm not going to wait until I'm 65 to start enjoying my life. I need to make sure I'm doing things in the present that are fully engaging me and doing what I want to do, because I don't have all the time in the world ahead of me, which is, I think, a young person's view of I got all this time, so I think you see Picard say that in Generations. I've realized I have less years in front of me than I do behind me. And, and I think that's the thing. So yeah, I think it's a really good theme. And I think it's part of what makes this movie really good. This is a deep movie. Sorry guys, that was a lot, but.
And Christos, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in Star Trek 2, in this movie, Kirk is supposed to be 48.
Yeah, it's about right too.
So,
yeah, because his birthday was. I think that's in our trivia, by the way, because his birthday is revealed in. It's revealed in an Enterprise episode through the Mirror Darkly. I think that the date of this episode is. The date of this movie is revealed through that Enterprise episode. It's also important to point out, by the way, just as a technical note, listeners, there's like a 12-year gap between the motion picture and the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
It's not just this just happened, 2 years ago, as it did in life. There's a 12-year. They aged them up, because motion picture in season 3 at TOS was like 2 years. There's a 2-year gap there. So they kind of caught up everything through this gap. Kristin, why don't you introduce us into topic 2?
Oh, such a big piece of this film, and of really Kirk's ongoing relationship with the character of Khan, is that of him as a villain and the genesis of vengeance. So when we're looking at revenge versus justice, how does one make a distinction between the two? So, revenge versus justice, which I'm assuming is meant to be that we are going through the legitimate channels, as opposed to taking matters into one's own hands, which is usually what revenge comes from. So Khan's motivation, what were his motivations leading him to be the villain, right? And it's interesting, because I don't believe that the same motivation for what he did in Space Seed are what are motivating him as a villain in Wrath of Khan. Because I think so much happens on the planet that his original motivation of just world domination because of their genetic modification, that is just a tiny piece of the pie now. He has now been insulted. He has accumulated insane amounts of loss, including his wife. He has been literally beat down to nothing, and that is unacceptable. So now I believe that his motivation in Wrath of Khan is revenge, but in Space Seed, there was nothing to take revenge on.
Yeah.
Because at that point, Kirk really hadn't offended him yet. What does everyone else think of that? Kelvin.
Sorry, Kelvin. I think we're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I think the Khan in Space Seed and the Khan in Wrath of Khan are very different places in life. And this Khan series is going to answer a lot of those questions. You just know it will.
Yeah.
If anything, in episode 1 in Paradise, he's almost quite grateful to Kirk. That's where he starts the journey of this stupid human who, could have ended us, actually gave us this opportunity. He's given me a planet to dominate, to grow, to shape. I'm going to make it this beautiful historical monument where everyone will adore me and the empire I'm going to build. He's very romanticized by it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this thing, what you've just said about all of these deaths, these sacrifices, I'm not going down kind of like mental illness route, but often, sometimes, when something is so catastrophically bad that you do go on this very vengeful journey, sometimes you need someone to blame. Sometimes there needs to be a target for these negative emotions or the way we act to this situation. And he's clearly chosen Kirk as an individual that he's blaming the entire situation on. Now, it was, again, spoiler if you've not heard it, but it was hinted at in the dialogue of Paradise that the historian lady suggested that maybe Kirk knew that SETI Alpha 6 was going to explode and destroy the climate on SETI Alpha 5. Maybe Khan thought that as well. Maybe he thought, he's marooned us on this planet, and then he knows we're going to die anyway. So all of those things, I think, wrap into this mentality of revenge. Me personally, I've been through similar thought processes in the past when I've had down periods, shall we call them, of somebody else is to blame to this. This entire situation that I've been through is down to that person and their evil ways, and they've got it in for me. And there's absolutely no evidence of that. I just completely constructed that in my own mind and made that a narrative. So without making me sound like, oh, I empathize a lot with the villain here, I really do. I see how you can go crazed from this desire for revenge.
Well, I mean, we all deal with trauma in very different ways, right? And our brains have the different fail-safe mechanisms to keep us from imploding. And sometimes how we rationalize things is to keep us from slipping too far into whatever. But I think a big thing is the idea that one is entitled. And I think for people who walk through life with this sense of entitlement, suddenly when you are faced with this, you are not able to take any responsibility for your actions or for the situation in which you find yourself, right? And I think that is one thing about Khan is he never once saw that he was in fact in the wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that is the most dangerous thing about him, is the fact that he can never see that he himself needs to take responsibility.
Yeah. A couple of things here. I agree with a lot of what Kelvin said. I think he actually is happy. And this, if we relate it back to this new audio drama we have here, he's happy with what's happening. That he's on this planet and gets to go build this empire. So I think, and Kristen Beyer did say this in the interview I was listening to the other day, that this 8-episode deal is going to get us from where he is at the end of Space Seed and to where he is in Wrath of Khan. I think it's also like one of the scenes I'm reminded of in Wrath of Khan is when the guy's name is, I think it's like Jokum or something. They never say his name on screen, but Joaquin. Yeah. He reminds Khan that you've escaped, you have a starship, you have the means to go wherever you want, you've defeated Kirk, and this is where Khan's hubris takes in with that revenge. Because you're right, you're like, dude, you can just cut and run. And this comes up twice in this movie, after they've escaped SETI Alpha 5 and after he's gotten the Genesis device. Khan has 2 opportunities to run, but he doesn't. He chooses to go on that. I'm Captain Ahab, and I'm going after Kirk.
Yeah, and I absolutely love the parallel to Moby Dick, because I think Moby Dick is one of the oldest stories of unfettered hubris leading to disaster that we've had, and we've heard that story, that sort of parable throughout time, but Moby Dick, I think, is one of the most applicable to the relationship between Khan and Kirk. But Christos, you're bringing up the Genesis device, and so let's dive into this whole concept in the first place. So in her proposal to Starfleet, Amanda, right?
Carol.
Sorry, I was doing Spock's mom. Carol gives a really good explanation and reasoning why this is so important. And you know what? When you look at it, you're like, I get it, with population growth and food supply and all of that. This makes sense to have this ability to create viable planets and abundant resources. And good Lord, the apples in the Genesis cave looked delicious. Don't mind if I do.
Granny Smith.
Oh, just let's go. But then, of course, leave it to Bones to bring up like what the crap are we doing?
Yeah.
Because what if this is launched where people exist? And suddenly there is, again, that other side of the coin. What else are we not looking at because we are so blinded by this one perspective, right? So what are our thoughts on the scientific and moral implications of something as impactful as the Genesis device, not only as, just a plot device in the storyline, but also as just a general metaphor? What are your thoughts, Amy?
I really enjoy the idea of this Genesis device. I sort of think it's interesting and sort of begs the question of, well, how does life start? And can we create it? What does it take to get all the molecules and all the gravity and all the, and now we're just going to do it. I think it's very science fiction and fun to let your brain go down. And definitely is that double-edged sword where it's like, yeah, you could absolutely destroy with this. And it goes to, well, you're creating life. What kind of life? This is life that you are putting the parameters. And who says that your parameters are the correct parameters to create a world?
Yeah.
And I love that, Amy, because that is very much how the Klingons approach the whole idea of needing to take over the Genesis planet in Star Trek 3, right? Because he's like, look at this planet. They can create this planet. Yeah, and it's going to have the Federation flag, and it's going to be dominated by these people. And it's almost like a little bit of a discourse on colonialization.
Yeah.
And how, certain superpowers of the world just went and assumed that their way of life was the correct way of life and superimposed it on other cultures. And no, as a Canadian and seeing what the early white colonizers did to the First Nations people in Canada is awful. Like literally extinct groups of people now because of this type of stuff. So yeah. I love that perspective, Amy. Kelvin, what do you think? Oh, no, Christos, what do you think?
Sorry, I was trying to tie this back. You were starting to bring it to Star Trek 3, and that's what I wanted to do, because I just think really quickly, I like that this isn't just dropped. I love that Star Trek 3 becomes this a debate on Genesis, and that because it's so often in Star Trek, we have this world-changing event, and then it gets dropped on the next episode or the next movie. So I just wanted to say I love that literally Star Trek 3 and in somewhat Star Trek 4 is a trilogy of, let's talk about, let's explore this idea and the idea that the Klingons look at it as a weapon of mass destruction, not a creation thing. So Kelvin, sorry, I didn't mean to get in there, Kristin.
No, it's all good.
No, that's all right. It does make me think. Obviously, this is terraforming itself is nothing new in Star Trek or in life. If you go back to arable farming and full crop rotation and selective breeding of animals, it's all ways of terraforming to make the conditions suitable for one species or one animal. What the Genesis device does is the immediate removal of the existing conditions to make way for its own matrix. which is very scary. You know, it is literally the atom bomb going off or whatever. But there is a lot of fear in the world at the moment of the gradual terraforming of cultures and different ways of life. And it's why there's this whole fear and hate culture of things like immigration and changing of communities, when people look back saying, where I live used to be so different 50 years ago than it is now. Yes, of course it is. The world changes. And, you know, the variety is the spice of life, infinite diversity. So I think that boiling it down and reducing cultural change to terraforming in Genesis is a very powerful way of discussing people's fear of change. So it stands up just as much now, if not more, than it did back then.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what I always found interesting too was the device in Nemesis, I'm just thinking, is almost like a reverse Genesis, where it goes in and it wipes out all life but leaves infrastructure. So for taking over, right? And so it's instead of building to take over, it's destroying to take over. So we kind of get both the two ends of the spectrum within Star Trek. And real quickly, I do want to just touch on Ricardo Montalbán's iconic performance as Khan, and what we think, and what do you think his legacy has been within the franchise, and what do we think his legacy will continue to be and grow and change as new people tap into the joy that is early Trek? What do we think his legacy is going to continue to evolve to be?
A beautiful chest.
Oh,
you know, I appreciate an open shirt. I'm sure you've all seen me with the buttons down.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very much a style icon for me.
I love that.
Wasn't there a huge debate that people thought he was wearing a plastic chest piece? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
I worked hard for these. Thank you.
Those incline lifts.
Right? Those are incline chest presses all day long.
I did those yesterday.
So let me guess, you're a little sore today?
A little bit.
Yeah. Amy, what do you think about Ricardo? Oh, so I just catch you just as you go and drink your coffee.
We heard her pour it.
Ricardo,
Yeah.
what are your feelings towards him? What I meant.
Oh my gosh, sorry about that. No, I can only, I look at him and I see Fantasy Island. So that's just, I think it's so fun to see him on Star Trek, because my first knowing him is Fantasy Island.
So slightly different role.
Yes.
So what you're saying though is Ricardo's acting had range.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Christos, what do you think?
I say, I mean, he hits it out of the park. He is the perfect villain, whether you're going to call him villain or not. He's the perfect villain. I always say it's well known that Star Trek II is the movie that saved the franchise. And I think there's a lot of things that make this movie nearly perfect. We'll say nearly perfect, but it is Ricardo Montalbán's performance has a lot to do, which makes this movie very believable. And there's an old YouTube clip running around of Siskel and Ebert reviewing this movie in 1982. Neither one of them are fans of the franchise, but they both loved this movie. And one of the things they talk about so much is this iconic performance and how believable it was.
I wish, like, I always feel as though I was born about 15 to 20 years too late. I feel like I was meant to have been born significantly earlier than I was, because I would have loved to have been in a theater in 1982 watching this movie. And we were talking about this last night, Maurice.
Yep.
What must have the vibe in the theater been like when Spock died and no one had any idea it was coming? The shock, the tears must have been flowing, but we didn't get to experience that.
Have you seen it in the cinema ever in your life? Have they ever shown it as part of a film festival when you've got to go? Yeah. It does make such a difference.
Yeah,
I have, but I think what Kristin's referring to is this idea that we now know Spock comes back because of 1984 and beyond. This idea that he died, and then you leave the theater, and that's
and have to carry on with your life.
Part of the end credits for The Wrath of Khan, doesn't it come back with Star Trek will return with Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock? So it kind of says he's coming back. It suggests he's coming back in the credits. So unless you got up off your arse and left earlier, you might put 2 and 2 together there.
Yeah. I mean, there is definitely some, implication, or, they introduce the idea, but, you don't even know if they're going to greenlight a sequel, let alone, until it's a success. So yeah, it definitely hits. So moving on to our next topic, one that is near and dear to me, we're going to talk about the character of Saavik. And I don't want to really see the legacy of Kirstie because we know later in life she was quite divisive. But the introduction of Saavik happens in this movie. She is introduced as lieutenant, and she's in the command training program. So she's basically Spock's protege, and I think the idea was that they were going to kill Spock, so let's introduce his replacement. I think that's how this character started. Obviously, they by the time the movie was even done being filmed, they were already thinking Leonard Nimoy signaled he may come back. So they dropped the coffin on the Genesis planet to set his possible return. But, Kirstie is the first Saavik and the originator of the role. It's hinted at that it was written off screen that she's half Romulan, half human. There's a deleted scene that confirms this, still remains a deleted scene. So Kirstie's interpretation is very much has that Romulan, there's some emotion to her. She's not fully Vulcan in her portrayal. What do you all guys think of the character of Saavik, and pretty much our first real look at a female Vulcan? Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like her portrayal. Usually when you think of Vulcans, and they're very stone, statuesque, and she has, just by being Kirstie Alley, she has a softness that the juxtaposition between that and the sharpness and stoneness of a Vulcan is so interesting, and it adds layer because you see she's still just so hung up on this Kobayashi Maru and is always asking and how did you get out of it? And don't you believe it? And so we get that discussion with her where she's trying to figure it out as to how to be the best officer in Starfleet and a Vulcan. So I like her softness, but she's still in her movement, and how her body language is still so Vulcan, but she's got this softness.
Yeah. I love it. I love what you think about that, because you're right. She's strong and soft at the same time. There's a sexy vulnerability to her as well. Mm-hmm. Kelvin, I'm going to ask you, what do you think would have been different about Star Trek 3 had Kirstie Alley reprised that role and carried on that same performance versus the Robin Curtis, very different take on Saavik?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I think I find Robin Curtis's delivery of the "David is dead" line quite iconic, because it is done in such a traditional Vulcan manner. I think that certainly would have been different. There might have been a bit of a tear from Kirstie Alley. I think the relationship between Kirstie Alley and David would have played very differently. I think that would have had a lot more emotion to it. I also think the Ponfar scenes with Spock would have possibly hit a lot more because of the Kirstie Alley being the mentee of Spock's mentor. Going to have to shag your mentor would probably be a little bit more weird. But I think mentally I compartmentalize these characters so much because of the change in actress that I've not really considered that. I mean, you know, don't throw me off the podcast, Christos, but I do prefer Robin Curtis's Saavik. I know. I like my Vulcans to be Vulcan. I think if you wanted them to be emotional, make her a different species. However, that said, I don't think we would have had T'Pol, and I don't think we would have had T'Lyn in the same characterizations without Kirstie Alley's Saavik. You know, T'Pol was sexy and vulnerable because of the emotional struggle she has. T'Lyn did it in a comedy way with her sassiness. But these Vulcan females were not your traditional Vulcan females that you see like T'Pau or, you know, other Tuvok's wife. So I'm grateful to Kirstie Alley, but I'm also quite intrigued. I would like to see a version of The Search for Spock with Kirstie Alley to see what would that be like, and see would I enjoy it as much, and would my opinion change.
I personally feel it would have made it a stronger movie. I think a recast hurts movie franchises, regardless of Robin Curtis' performance. It's a recast. So it's one little chink that would have made that movie better. I also think it's very important to note that when they wrote Star Trek VI, they distinctly wanted Valaris, with a later version of the script. It was Saavik in Star Trek VI to be the betrayer, and it was to be Kirstie Alley reprising the role. And when Kirstie Alley couldn't be secured for the film, they got Kim Cattrall, but changed the character because they didn't want to introduce the third character. But it's funny that they could see the Kirstie Alley version of Saavik betraying because of that half Romulan, because of that vulnerability and more emotional based Vulcan. All right.
I'm kind of glad they didn't do that though. Because that would have wrecked the legacy of Saavik, who I always really enjoyed watching as a kid, watching this really beautiful Vulcan woman be strong and smart and logical. I loved it. So I think that having her betray everything in Star Trek VI would have been sad.
Oh, Kristin, you are so on point, because I was going to ask you about representation of women and what Saavik meant to that in 1982, introducing a very strong female into our crew.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've said it a few times that most of my role models growing up were all from the Trek series. And Wrath of Khan was probably one of my first Treks that I ever viewed as a child. My mom was in and out of surgeries. My dad didn't know what to do with two kids. So he's like, here, watch Star Trek. And it was Wrath of Khan. 6-year-old watching the eel scenes was a bit dicey, but otherwise I was obsessed with Saavik. Obsessed. I always wanted to watch her scenes, and then same with 3 and then a little bit of 4 that she's in. You know, I was always upset that she didn't ever come back after 4. Well, at that point anyway, like, yeah. But it was like my family was rewatching all the movies on VHS, getting ready for the 91 release of The Undiscovered Country. So we watched these movies constantly to pick up everything before the new film came out. And I just remember seeing her and being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because the really only other women have been Uhura, which was never really used to her full potential, especially during the series. And then otherwise, it's just all these women with weird filters on their faces playing the damsel in distress. So finally, we had a woman who was not a damsel in distress. And I think it was very, very cool to see. Amy, how about you? Like, what effect did it have on you?
Not much, because I didn't really watch it in my formative years. So, but yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, that she's not a damsel in distress, and that is lovely to see, especially in the early 80s.
Yes.
Kelvin, how about you bring us into our final topic of this, and probably the other piece of the puzzle, what makes this an awesome movie?
You know, we had Star Wars going on. We had other big movie epic space battles. So Star Trek had to raise its game and give us the pew 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 that we take for granted almost now as a huge part of Star Trek. So I just want to reflect on that a little bit, and the elevation through the cinematic model that we got in all of these space battles. I think the first thing I would point out is the introduction of the Miranda class with the Reliant. You know, we love our ships. Christos has probably a room full of Eagle Moss fan home ones everywhere. This was the start. In the original series, we didn't see different class vessels. There was just a lot of other Constitution class ships. So this was the first time we saw Starfleet ships that looked a little bit different and a bit funky. And the Miranda class was such a workhorse, a bit like the Excelsior, that we saw it all throughout the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. So there's that to be very grateful for in the first instance. But the space battle gave you a real feeling of being in space. And this film did a great job of making space feel three-dimensional in the fact that ships are not just head-on. They can be above, they can be below. And to the detriment of Star Trek, I think they've got that wrong a lot after this film, when they should really know better. How many times in Voyager have they come across an obstacle that is so wide it would take them years to go around it? And you're like, we'll just go under. They've lost a lot of the three-dimensionalness. So this film was not only ahead of its time and of its time, that it just richened the franchise. Amy, I'm going to throw to you, Amy, because you don't strike me as someone who comes to Star Trek for the pew 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 and the space battles. Is there any resonance of what the Wrath of Khan gives us in the space scenes that lifts you at all?
I really enjoy the special effects, and especially at that time period of everything's like you make it by hand, and the models and the blowing up, and that tactileness of it is really awesome. But the way that they do the nebula and how it's like you can't see, so you feel almost claustrophobic with the fog, and the view screen is, you can't see it. So it's like, oh, we're almost on them. Like, they do a lot of things that make this battle enjoyable. I can follow it. I know what's going on. I love the mention of the Z-axis, and the three-dimensionality, as you were talking about. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I have a lot of complaints with the newer Trek. Like, it's just so dark, like with Discovery, and I can't follow any of these battles in space because all I see is blackness. But with the nebula, it's light and the spirals, and it's really, really lovely.
A very pretty battle.
Yeah.
Christos, what do you think of the space scenes?
Of course, I love them to death. And Amy, you're absolutely right. The reason why Reliant was they invented the Miranda class was they were going to use another Constitution class the same way they did all the way through the original series. But they're like, no, we want the audience to be able to figure out which ship is which, the good guy ship, the bad guy ship, very clearly, especially since they were both going to be Federation ships. And it needed to look different to be able to follow. I think the submarine-inspired warfare is just classic. And, this was my introduction to Star Trek. And so I think that action in the pew pew is a big part of what made me relate to it at first and bring me in. So I think there's that aspect of it. This is the only Star Trek film that has phasers being fired. And I think it's so pretty the way the phasers are fired and elegant. It's a little bit more of a dance that happens with these two ships, and especially as they get to the nebula and the climactic finale of the movie, you are just watching a battle of intellect start to take place. And Amy, you said it right there, the Z-axis and whatnot, because Spock points out that, well, Khan has exhibited very two-dimensional thinking, and so what do we do? Go to that third access and let's go from another angle. My only regret is that when they first come around and there he is, they miss.
Blame Chekhov.
Damn.
Kristin, what do you think of the space battle, or even just that kind of beating your opponent tactically, whether it comes to the prefix codes aspects or the outsmarting? You know, you've talked about the effect on this of you as a child. Did it help you think of how to like outwit people and to use knowledge in this way? What effect did the space battles have on you, if any?
Well, I think the necessary use of this was the movies that were airing at the same time of Wrath of Khan were very action heavy. So if they wanted to kind of reprise everything from what had happened with the motion picture, which was definitely much more cerebral, they needed that action. They needed that something to pull people in, like the Star Wars and everything else, which were very battle heavy. So I think that's one reason why they may have gone this direction, was that is what people of the time were looking for as content to consume. Personally, I think the piece of the tactical approach to this battle that has always sat with me most was going into the nebula. And how people are like, well, now we're going to have our hands essentially tied behind our back. Yes, but so are they. And I think that sauce for the goose, Saavik.
That's a regeneration of mine, by the way.
I think that brought in the idea of equity, not equality, but equity. Well, you know, giving people what they need to succeed, and if one group isn't able to have access to it, then why should other groups, right? So I think this was a very interesting concept of even playing grounds for people in life. So and the fact that, you know, was that a risky little move? It absolutely was, but it paid off in the end because the playing ground was even. And in life, still to this day, 40 whatever years after this movie came out, we still do not have even playing grounds for all people. We all need to go into a nebula right now and have that equal playing ground.
Off and running. I love it. One of my favorite little tidbits from the director's cut of the movie is Kirk saying that we're only alive because I knew something about these ships that he didn't, and referencing the prefix code and whatnot. And I kind of like that idea of it's a battle of wits, and, you know, Khan may have started off with an advantage, but, you know, in the chess match here, Kirk knows more about these vessels. So
I would say about this battle in the Mutara Nebula, in the late 90s, there was a Star Trek game called Starfleet Academy, which I was obsessed with. I used to play it constantly. And one of the levels in it was basically a do-over of this. So you fly into a Mutara Nebula and you have to do a space battle and find them. And it was very advanced in terms of strategy and tactician for someone so young to think that you have to divert power from life support to the sensors so that you have a better chance of seeing the other ship. And in those formative years of me as a early teenager, I was like, wow, I've probably learned a lot of life skills just from knowing this film and how it works and the outcome, to applying that in a computer game model to what I probably actually do in the workplace now in a completely different setting, but with similar outcomes. So I've actually got a lot to be grateful for the strategy in this film.
And critical thinking. I think that overall, a lot of Trek, I'd say the majority of Trek, really engages you in the idea of critical thinking and looking at things from both sides and whatnot, and trying to then formulate for yourself how you're moving forward and what your reasonings are. And I that all started for me, very much with this movie. And I love the idea of what you said, Kelvin, about diverting resources and stuff, because again, that is such a necessary thing in life. Like, I've got a finite amount of money, and I know these are my necessities for living, and so sometimes, you know, you have to take losses in maybe your social life or whatever. And so I think it taught us, a lot of us, at a very young age, that, you know, you need to think before you act.
I'm diverting a lot of power from live support to pay for the summer that we've just had.
Yeah.
I hear that. All right. So we'll move on to assimilations and regenerations. And for the sake of time, we'll just kind of read through these and keep the discussion just more like, I think they speak for themselves, actually. So, Kristin, you have quite a few here. So why don't you just get started on the assimilations?
Yes. I actually have no regenerations of this movie. I'm just going to come here and say that. So after the motion picture did not have its intended effect. Like, it did okay at the box office, but considering how much they paid for that movie, they didn't actually make a huge profit. The critical review was meh, and there wasn't a lot of like people stoked to see the next one. But this movie did what it needed to do to reignite that interest in the franchise, and so I feel that we owe this movie a lot. Like, without this, where would we be today? Would things have just sort of shriveled up after the motion picture, like the people did in the transporter malfunction?
Chris, am I just keep like?
Am I just gonna keep reading on? Okay,
just do all of yours. Yeah.
Sure. Oh, okay. Great. Oh, prepare yourselves. So I think the visuals in this movie still hold up, and we were talking about that with the space scenes and the space flights and all that, where there's something about non-CGI special effects that for me will always be better than CGI, because then you're just watching a video game. It's not really even a movie anymore. So what's the point? Everything from the costumes, the lighting, and even the little eel babies. I thought that was super gross, and congratulations, because you made me turn away from the TV screen several times. And even today when I watch, I'm like, ugh, it's ugh. Khan's face makeup at the end. Amazing, right? There was a lot that happened visually that I think still stands up. We've talked about all of these, but I think that the fact there are so many really powerful themes within this movie that we've been able to talk for an hour and a half about them is really telling. So this was, a lot of us were introduced to this movie as young children, and so at a young age we were looking at issues of suicide, altruism, loss of innocence in war, and for me, I think the worst thing to realize about this is they were frozen in around mid-90s, 96-ish. That means they never got to experience the music and the movie and the TV of the 90s. They were not around for 98, which is arguably one of the best years in music ever. That's so sad. That is so sad.
They missed the Spice Girls.
Right?
Maybe they would have had a cheerier disposition.
Yeah, they were probably so busy planning for this, they missed Seattle grunge entirely. Ricardo Montalbán, he's just the bomb. And my last assimilation, and then I'll shush, is the pacing of this movie, I think, is just perfect. It moves along. It's not too fast where you feel you're getting lost, but it also isn't 10 minutes of somebody flying through space in a spacesuit, right? Or 25 minutes going through a wormhole. The motion picture, bless its soul, for all the effects that it did have, it was slow. It was slow, but I find media and content today is almost too fast. So I still feel like the pacing of, I will actually say 2, 3, and 4, the pacing is amazing. Amazing. So those are my main assimilations of this movie. And I could go on, but we're running out of time.
Kelvin, how about you give us your
I'm going to keep it very quick. I only have one. This movie gave us the Monster Maroon uniforms, and they are exquisite. I love my uniforms from the conventions and everything, as you know. I won't buy a cheap Monster Maroon. If I'm going to have one, it's going to be a handmade, perfect material replica, and it's going to look stunning. I refuse to wear anything other than that. I'll give me Chinese Cosmart seller ones for everything else, not for a Monster Maroon. It deserves quality. And it's the militaristicness of it, but the design aesthetic, the way it looks, brilliant, beautiful, and there's a reason it carried on for so long of Star Trek and even modified versions into the next generation. That uniform stood the test of time. Thank you, Wrath of Khan.
It is a very good, very, very, very good uniform. And I agree with you. I don't own one for the same exact reasons that you just stated. Amy, do you have any assimilations for the movie you kind of don't like as much as the rest of us?
Yeah, I'm good.
Wow. You know what they say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. There's
Right.
Amy.
One thing I'm gonna say, harkening back to the Monster Maroons, is if I win the lottery, I'm not gonna tell anybody, but there will be signs. And that I will just be like, hey, what are your measurements? And I will buy everybody top of the line Monster Maroons if I win the lottery.
It's on the official record.
Yes.
Only if you cosplay Valeris, because I feel like you've got the skin tone to do that.
I don't know if I have the sharp jawline of Kim Cattrall though. Kim Cattrall was like
makeup. We can do it. It's all blending in shadows.
My hair.
No wig, honey. Wigs.
Wig.
She's wearing a wig. She's wearing a wig in that movie. Okay, my two really brief assimilations are the director's cut adds so much more to this movie, and so that is the version I watch. I can't probably tell you the last time I watched the theatrical version of this movie. And I want to call out the mother effing score by Mr. James Horner. It's the perfect score, and they brought him back in Star Trek 3. And I think that's the reason those themes have lasted so long. And just this was James Horner's first big role as a conductor, as the guy who does the score for the movie. And he also, was famous for having done Titanic. So he did Star Trek long before Titanic. So there you go.
Great music. Great, music.
Finally, Amy's on the scoreboard there. All right. All right.
She's talking about Celine Dion and Titanic.
Yeah. I only see two very brief regenerations. Kelvin, let's hear yours.
Oh, again, really quick. It just really took me out, and I've never liked it that they call Saavik Mr. Saavik in this film, and I don't really see it done anywhere else in the franchise or done again. So the kind of the misgendering, I never got it as a child. I was like, is she supposed to be male? Is it because women are not supposed to be strong and commanding? So let's reference her with a male pronoun. It didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. It didn't make sense to Star Trek, so they stopped doing it. So yeah, get that one in the bin.
Yeah, it makes me think. What you're saying makes me think of Caretaker from Voyager, where Janeway and Harry Kim are having their little talk about ma'am versus sir and things like that. My first regeneration I kind of mentioned. I don't like that it was later retconned that Saavik was all Vulcan versus part Romulan. When that scene gets cut, I think Leonard Nimoy took it his opportunity to retcon that. So I wish they had left the character to have that more emotional appeal. And then in the scene in the Kirk's quarters where they're talking about Genesis and whatnot, McCoy is kind of portrayed to have this religious kind of point of view, and he seems to be portrayed as a religious man. And I think maybe that's like 1982 DeForest Kelley talking more than Dr. McCoy. And that feels a little bit like wrong for them to be implying there on the, they're bringing religion into this. And, when I know this is, I think if Roddenberry had been allowed more control, it's things like that wouldn't have happened. But a lot of other good things would not have happened, like Monster Maroons.
I got a quick little comment about that, and take what you will from this.
Sure.
So, I mean, obviously the idea of Genesis, from a bit of a biblical perspective, is going to be brought up because they named the device Genesis, right? So it's kind of hard to have it named that and not kind of bring it up. However, McCoy says, according to myth, the earth was created in 7 days. To call that myth, if one was actually a Christian, Every single time I would watch this movie and my mom would hear that line, she would pause it and she would get upset. That is not a myth. That is fact. It says so in the Bible. It's history. That is what happened. So I don't know if McCoy actually was being portrayed as religious. I think he's being portrayed as being educated in history. But when you refer to what Christians see as the start of mankind as a myth and not fact, I don't know if that's actually religious. I don't know what, because I know that it pissed off a lot of Christians that watch the movie every time they hear that word. So I don't know. Because I've never, yeah. I'm guessing then you didn't grow up with did you grow up with a crazy religious parent?
No, I mean, I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church where we didn't even speak English at church. And so that's why I think that shielded me from actually getting indoctrinated. Because I didn't understand Greek. And I still don't. So
I have a question. And I don't understand why when they were surprised to find Khan and that they didn't know it was Ceti Alpha. Like when they come back. So Chekhov was with Kirk in Space Seed, right? When he dropped him off on the planet and drove away. So, flew away. So I don't understand why he's coming and like, oh, I don't even know this place. This is uninhabited. I know the other planet blew up and it changed the course of things, but wouldn't Chekhov know this is the area, the system?
They'd know the system, but not the point. They thought they were going to Ceti Alpha 6, so we didn't expect to see the Botany Bay. That's right. But it's the same solar system. I'll give you that.
Okay. But didn't they count? Like, couldn't you count to be like, why are there only 5 planets?
It's so funny. The whole idea that Chekhov was not in Space Seed. That's a whole trivia thing. And so Amy's hitting on some trivia and continuity anyway.
Oh, well, yeah. I will say, in the book Terrain in Hell, they actually kind of address it, where Chekhov is actually the ensign put in charge of beaming everybody from Khan's party down onto Ceti Alpha 5. So Chekhov was actually the last crew of the Enterprise that Khan sees. So that's how the books sort of gloss that over. But otherwise, no, Chekhov is not featured in Space Seed, but as an actor in the show. But people are like, well, that doesn't mean Chekhov himself wasn't on the ship. He just wasn't a bridge crew yet.
Yeah. That's my headcanon too. He was there, but he just wasn't on screen.
He was a bebe, so he wasn't on the bridge.
It's so funny. So when I was pulling for trivia and continuity, there was 3 times the amount that we're going to go through, and we're already going to go through quite a few. But I cut that one because I thought it was like this. That one's been discussed so much in fandom that because I was trying to cut the more obvious ones. But we are going to read through some really cool trivia and continuity stuff, and we're just going to kind of just rapid fire. And for our hosts, I put your initials on yours. So Amy, why don't you kick us off?
Well, this movie is the only original series movie to not feature Mark Leonard in any way.
Okay, as with the motion picture, the movie was pre-sold to the ABC TV network for the first airing in the USA under a similar arrangement. This entailed 2 airings of the film, the first to run no earlier than 1985. Its ABC premiere was on the 24th of February, 1985, and its second run was in 1988. ABC ran the film a third and final time on the 18th of June, 1989, in conjunction with the third rerun of the motion picture that year. So like the motion picture, the television version of the movie featured deleted or alternative scenes reintegrated for the TV airing that were originally cut from the theatrical version and with some mild censoring. So unlike the motion picture, there was The ABC version had not seen any home media format releases in the home market, nor were there several scenes and takes included in the later 2002 Director's Edition DVD release. Man, that was a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's a lot to follow. I'm going to have to reread that to fully digest what that all means.
No videos or DVDs. It went straight to telly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. No visitors were allowed on the set during the filming of Spock's death to keep it a secret as much as possible. At least there weren't as many ways to have spoilers back then. But yeah, definitely want to make sure there's nobody spreading no nothing. Nicholas Meyer remembered when they shot the scene that he looked around and saw members of the crew, including cinematographer Gain Rescher, crying and did not understand their reason for bursting into tears. It was much later, he admitted, when he understood the significance of that scene. Who wouldn't cry?
Well, Nicholas Meyer famously was not a Trekkie and didn't know anything about the franchise until he took on the project. So he did not have that levity of the 15 years of the Star Trek franchise. His loss.
Yeah.
The pre-launch background dialogue overheard on the bridge as Kirk and McCoy arrive is almost identical to the checklist overheard in main engineering before the Enterprise launches in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Since Kirk's birth date was established in Federation computer records in Star Trek Enterprise episode In a Mirror Darkly, Part 2, which you mentioned, to be March 22nd, actor William Shatner's actual birthday, this establishes the beginning of the film is set on March 22nd, 2285.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
I knew you would.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Kirk is an Aries. He's a fire sign. Makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense. This is the only original series movie in which a Federation ship fires its phasers. All of the films in the TOS series have ships firing photon torpedoes. And the next film in the series to have Federation ship fire its phasers was in Star Trek Generations 12 years later, for all the good it did.
I love you guys.
My gosh. This film marks the first appearance in the Star Trek franchise of an isolation door in main engineering. It can be seen lowering during the surprise attack sequence following Khan's hijacking of the Reliant. That door later became the shuttle bay door in Enterprise D. I do enjoy thrifty people. Reuse, reduce, recycle. That's definitely what they do. Yeah.
I mean, they would literally build those sets like 4 years later in real time. So we don't think of that too much, but yeah, it was the same era. During the scene at Kirk's home where he and McCoy share a drink, a Commodore PET personal computer is recognizable at the rear of the set. At the time of filming, William Shatner was the commercial spokesperson for the Commodore line of home computers, including the PET, Personal Electronic Transactor. Although it's likely the PET in the scene was intended to be a Trek-era computer, given this film establishes that Kirk collects antiques, it could also have been part of his collection.
The encounter between the Enterprise and the Reliant is glimpsed in a short trek, Ephraim and Dots, although the Enterprise is mistakenly labeled NCC 1701A.
How very dare they?
That's a big screw up.
How very
yeah.
And finally, in 2024, this film was selected by the United States to be added to the Library of Congress's National Film Registry.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's what they kind of hold on to as what they see is some of the most impactful and important pieces of cinematic history to be protected in case anything happens.
Yeah. You should put First Contact in there.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to bring us into our final thoughts. Previous movies covered in this series are Star Trek Generations, and I guess we covered Star Trek Section 31 as well. And of course, we have Wrath of Khan. It was so funny, too. I was going through our episode log, and instead of being the series MOV for movie, somebody put this in there as SC 31. So I was having the hardest time figuring out what was the second movie we covered in this series. I corrected that, by the way. So the next time we do a movie,
that was
it'll be a little
probably me,
easier.
sorry.
That's all right. I just thought it was cute. So what did we think? We have 3 movies here. Who did it better? I'm going to go to Amy first because we know this might not be her first choice.
Yeah.
Right. As I do with most original series, and if you've listened to me at all, you know I love the original series, and because it started Star Trek, and so I honor it. I appreciate, I have reverence for it, but I just don't enjoy it. So, with all of the love and respect I have, my favorite movie that we have covered so far is Generations.
Shocking, but totally on brand for you. Kristin, who did it best?
Out of the 3, Wrath of Khan for me, all day, every day.
Yeah. I kind of could tell by
great. Don't get me wrong, but
right down to your hat, we knew we had you. And Kelvin, I don't think I even need to ask the question, but we're going to let you anyway. Who did it?
Well, I don't know. I might surprise you.
Section 31, really?
Imagine. I respect the contribution to Star Trek lore, franchise, film in general that The Wrath of Khan gave. But it's not my favorite Star Trek film by a long shot. I would put Undiscovered Country and First Contact well above it. So considering where I am in terms of where I was when I first saw the movies and the emotional impact they had on me, I'm going Next Generation, and I'm with Amy. I'm giving it to Generations, sorry.
Wow, I did not see that coming.
Either did I, but hey, that's why I love that, every once in a while we surprise each other. Yes. I, of course, am going to go with Wrath of Khan. Just in this particular, I do agree with what Kelvin said. I would put Undiscovered Country as my favorite Star Trek movie. But in this 3, Section 31 is pretty much the garbage, number 14 at the bottom of the list of movies. Maybe down there with 5, but I know. We're shots fired, Kristin.
Compared to Section 31, I'm sorry.
They're both down there. They're the bottom 2. And anyways, so I guess we have a tie here for Generations and Wrath of Khan.
Okay, so nice. Maurice, out of these 3 movies, let's
have a tiebreaker.
Okay, tiebreaker.
Oh, I love it. Bring him in here.
Out of Generations, Section 31 and Wrath of Khan, what's your favorite?
Now, I love both movies, but TNG is just I gotta go with Generations.
I like that we had to bring in a tiebreaker, but
it did not go the way I expected. Anyway,
you just set yourself up for a very awkward lunch now, Maurice.
No. Yeah, because Kristin, you also took away my host vote has better, a little bit more weight, so I could have.
That's right.
That's okay. I love it. I love that people like all of it. So
hey, I still don't find Generations a bad movie. I think it was a great bringing together of the 2 worlds, and I thought it was super cute. And if only we could all go to the Nexus, I think we would all definitely.
I'm very much looking forward to my Captain Kirk action figure that comes with the horse and the eggs and the salt and pepper and all that and the dillweed. So, coming from the Nacelle Company, plug. Kelvin, can you tease next week's episode for us?
Ooh, yes. We are returning to our alternate reality series, part 6. And how timely that we've just had an end of season Strange New Worlds. We're going to discuss a really good end of season Strange New Worlds episode of the end of season 1, A Quality of Mercy. So season 1, episode 10. Come back next week for that.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's show, and there are many ways you can do this. You can join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective. You can join our Discord server, or you can follow the network on Blue Sky and Instagram at BQN Podcasts, or any of your hosts here, and we'll tell you how to do that in a few moments. To continue discussions, you can find the links and invite code in the show notes. So, Kristin, where can people find you when you're not eating rigatoni because it reminds you of the eels coming out of the ear in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan?
You can find me on Reddit as user Garrick's Fan Club. And of course, you can find me on Instagram at KStrats. And Kelvin, where can people find you when you are not selflessly putting the needs of others before the needs of your own?
Do you know her?
I'd love to think I do that. Yeah, I think that line laid out for someone else, and the name's got switched around anyway.
No.
When I'm not being completely altruistic in all aspects of my personal life, you can find me on most of the socials at Kelvin's Timeline, or you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook group, or you can find me right here on the network, where we will be returning with season 4 of The View Screen on the, is it the 5th of October? I think it is. It's whatever the Sunday is, first Sunday of October. Yay. And Mr. Nelson, where can people find you when you're not running into turbo lifts, wearing your hair still within regulation?
Well, when I'm not doing that, you can find me here on the network, where I'm co-hosting Union Federation, and we are finishing up covering Strange New Worlds. And then we are going to be discussing the Q series that came out on DVD. So we'll be exploring those episodes. I also, with Kelvin, we'll be starting season 4 of The View Screen October 5th, that's Sunday. You can find me in Discord and on our Facebook group. And that's about where you can find me. Christos, where can people find you when you aren't wearing your Wrath of Khan cardigan that looks so fabulous?
You can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky at Greek Geek and at What's the T-Bev. Also on our Facebook page, the BQN Collective, and the Discord server, and so generally all around. And I can tease that I am planning some limited 2 or 3 new episodes of What's the T-Bev to coincide with the break that we'll be on during View Screen, since I won't have weekly duties. I could be free to do some other things for you guys.
Nice. Well, if you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can join our Hit It reaction show, script readings, and enjoy our special patron-only shows of It's Green and Amy's Math Moments. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
If becoming a patron isn't your thing, you can still support the show by sharing our posts on social media, talking about it with your friends, or hitting the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leaving us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show.
At this time, we would like to thank our very own associate producer, the lovely JJ Seastrom, and a special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening music, and to some nobody from Manchester who does the artwork every week.
He's not nobody.
Not nobody.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us
as we search out
all good things.